Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We have just passed the trade deadline in the 2029 season. The Wings relatively active over the last few weeks. As you can see, we are first place in the National League East, up by a game and a half on the Mets, 4.5 on the Expos, and 5.5 on the Nationals. So it should be a pretty interesting battle over the final couple months of the season to hopefully hold on to that NL East crown and earn a first round bye in the playoffs. That is the primary goal of this team. Right now, we are second in the National League in runs against with 397 runs allowed, two worse than the Mets, and we are fifth in the National League in runs scored. So that combination obviously has added up to a winning percentage of over 600 on the year. And I think the moves we've made, hopefully on the margin, help us in our efforts to win this year. Recently made a trade for the excellent reliever Emmanuel Clase. Brought in Alec Burleson to take over for Eric Pena as our starting left fielder against right-handed pitching. And we brought in Nolan Arenado to be our starting third baseman, replacing Nolan Jones, who we traded away for him, and moving Kevin Made into more of a super utility role at second, third, and shortstop for us. We're also in a situation where Hayden Yinger is about a week away from beginning a rehab assignment now. He's been out since May, but honestly, over the last year plus, he's arguably been the most effective starting pitcher we have, going 14-3 with a 2.51 ERA last year, and he was 5-1 with a 1.74 ERA this year. So hopefully his 2 or 3 rehab starts, if he's ready in a week, will go well, and we'll have him back towards the end of this month, and hopefully that will be a nice boost for our team as we try to hold on to the National League East crown for a second consecutive season. We've also made one offer. With those deals that we made, we were, before those trades, about 6 or 7 million above where we are today next year in terms of our salary obligations. You can see now we're actually a little over 1 million lower. Now, granted, we've lost some players, notably Pena and Nolan Jones, as well as a few others who are going to be arbitration eligible this upcoming season. So we have fewer guys that we're paying for this $170 million. But we have opened up a little bit of financial flexibility. And given that Jace Barofin, who was the first round pick in the history of our organization back in 2023, is having a bit of a resurgent season for us, hitting 276 with 20 doubles and 15 homers in 283 at-bats. You can see those double and home run amounts are exactly where he was a year ago, in about 140 more at-bats. So he's been a lot more productive this year, and we recently made him an extension offer to buy out his final 2 years of arbitration and a few years of free agency. Not at big money, but coming in, if he agrees to the deal, a little less than his arbitration numbers were going to be these next 2 years, which hopefully will allow us to keep him on board. I've talked in the past about how I thought we'd really have it made as a team when we can move him from a everyday outfielder to kind of a fourth outfielder on the team. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think he's likely to be our starting right fielder, obviously, this season. And given the salary constraints, we're likely to be under next season, probably next season as well. So glad to get him locked up if we can. We'll let you know what happens on that front. Not huge money, so if we decided to move on from him, I think we would be able to. And some bad news. We had said Yinger seemed like he was a week away, and now that elbow inflammation is not getting cleared up as quickly as expected. So his return is unfortunately unknown at this point. Hopefully, we can have him back by the time at the major league level when we get to roster expansion in September. You know, if he's out for another 2+ weeks and we're then able to give him 2 or 3 starts in AAA towards the end of August. That's not the end of the world, but would love to ensure that he gets 4 or 5 starts at the major league level before the playoffs. It's only up only up a half game on the Mets now, as they've now won 4 in a row. We just lost to San Francisco yesterday, so the schedule is definitely getting tight. You can see we've got no games with the Mets this month. We do have a bunch against Montreal, another one of the teams that's chasing us. And then taking a look at the calendar in September, it looks like we've got a home series late in the month of September against the Mets. That could be critical for the division. And the season will actually end on September 30th this year, and the playoffs will begin right at the beginning of October. And we just lost another game to Pittsburgh, but more importantly, suffered I don't want to say freak injury, but our closer, Andres Munoz, got jumped walking down the street. Looks like since we were in Pittsburgh, that was probably in Pittsburgh. Could be out up to 7 weeks with bone marrow edema in his knee. He's been very productive for us this year. Made an all-star team for us this year. Haven't been able to get him a ton of innings pitched, even though we have tried using him earlier than the 9th inning as our closer. As I mentioned, we got Clase on board, who will definitely be able to step right into that role if the rehab timeline for Munoz is accurate at 7 weeks. Should be able to give him a game or two of action, hopefully at the end of September before we get to the playoffs. So not the end of the world, but certainly in a situation where we're still only half a game up on the Mets for the division. Losing one of the best pitchers in our bullpen is certainly not our preference. And the month of August is off to a rough start for our Wings. We've lost 4 in a row at this point, have dropped out of first place, and we're now a game and a half behind the Mets. Only 3.5 games ahead of the Expos now, who are going to be playing 4 in a row in Montreal. So that's becoming a critical series for us. We're still up 8 for the wild card, but clearly not the way we wanted to start our stretch run here for the Buffalo Wings this season. Well, as you may have noticed, I read things wrong. It was only a 3-game series in Montreal, and we did take 2 out of 3 there, which was positive. We've got 4 in a row now at Philadelphia, and then 3 on the road in Houston before we're finally going to get home for a week and a half towards the end of the month. So we're 1 game behind the Mets right now, and we did just get notice that if I could click on my team news rather than the league news that I never click on and is taking a long time to load, I could let you know that we have just re-signed Jace Barofin to that contract that I had mentioned we offered to him. I'll show you that now. 2.5 and $5 million the next 2 years, which were less than his expected arbitration numbers, pretty materially less this upcoming year, where he was about 3.3 now and then even 5.6. Then we did make a 3-year commitment and an average of 5.5 for his free agent years, and then we've got a team option in the final season. So is a 4th outfielder, if our payroll remains where it is, I think that number is still workable for us, particularly if he's a productive bat. Certainly if he ends up being a starter for us throughout this time period, happy to have him locked up at that deal. Average of $5 million a year over those 6 years, but we do have the opportunity to escape that final and most expensive year of the contract if it's not working out the way that we have hoped. And we've taken 2 of the first 3 in Philadelphia, have an opportunity to win the series today in the final game of that visit to the city of brotherly love. Unfortunately, though, the injury situation for us is getting not desperate, but definitely worse. Shane Bieber, sore elbow, that's going to have a moderate impact on his throwing for 2 to 3 weeks. Certainly nothing that we are going to mess around with at this stage of the season. So we are going to put him right on to the injured list. Give him as much time as he needs to hopefully get better. Yinger's return still unknown. Munoz out for 6 weeks and Bieber out for 2 or 3 weeks. So at this point, we're losing our closer and 2 of our top 4 starters, likely for most of this month in a best case scenario. The pickings for us in the minor leagues are getting a little slim at this point as far as the pitching staff, but clearly if we're able to get Bieber and Yinger back by late August, early September, that will help things. And then, as I've talked about, hopefully Munoz will be able to pitch a few games for us at the end of September, and we will be back to full health by the time we are getting into the playoffs. We are 2 games behind the Mets at this point. They continue to have a really strong month, 8-2 over their last 10, 3 wins in a row. Hopefully we can clinch the series here in Philadelphia before we have to go to Houston to face the best team in baseball, and they've won 7 in a row at this point. And unfortunately, we only split with Philadelphia in that 4-game series, so now we're off to Houston, 3 behind the Mets. So things are not going particularly well. I mentioned all the pitching injuries, and quite honestly, even Kim and Sullivan, who had been our 4 and 5 starters, and Painter, who had been our 3 starter, all of those guys have been moved up with the latest injury to Bieber, but they have been struggling over the last month or so with all of their ERAs climbing. Drew Rome, who we recently brought up from the minor leagues, pitched in the bullpen for us 3 games, and now with the latest injury, he's sliding in to be our number 5 starter over the next couple of weeks. We brought up Hideyasu Oki, minor league free agent signing from a few years ago, who spent a lot of time in our minor league system to round out the major league pitching staff. But it's getting a little tenuous right now. Not really concerned that we're not going to make the playoffs. We're still 6.5 games up for a wild card spot at this point, but going to have to start straightening things out over these next few weeks to make sure that we stay close enough to the Mets to make those 3 games at the end of September matter. And certainly doing something against these mighty Astros, who have won 8 in a row over the next 3 games, would be a nice step in that direction. And a small piece of good news, Hayden Yinger eligible to come off of the IL, so we are going to send him right down for a rehab assignment. Probably going to need 2, if not 3 starts down there before we feel comfortable bringing him back. And we did need that piece of good news because we were swept in Houston and lost the first game at home against Baltimore, 5 back of the Mets at this point, as we are plunging in the standings, only 4 up on a wild card at this point, 3-7 in our last 10, 5 losses in a row. And taking a look at the team stats, we are a sickly 5-11 here in August. Still have time to get that straightened out. And hopefully this long homestand that we began with a loss today will be an opportunity for us to start righting the ship a bit. And we lost a 6th in a row to Baltimore before finally winning the last game of that series. We've got 4 against Washington and 3 against Montreal coming up, all at home this week. Taking a look at the standings, we've got a 4-game lead on both of those teams in the division. Clearly, we're going to have to start winning some games and giving a little distance between ourselves and 2 of the teams that are chasing us for the wild card spot would be a nice start, and also hopefully let us close the gap on the Mets a little bit over the course of this week. Quick look at the leaderboards. Deshaun Seifu with 75 steals. Batting average has dipped just under 300 at this point, but still leads the league with 75 steals. Going to be close to see whether or not he gets to 100 this year again. Third in the National League, still in batter war. And Shohei Ohtani continues to lead the National League in pitcher war. 9-9 record, but a 3.14 ERA and 194 strikeouts in 166 innings pitched for us. And we kind of got the week we needed. We won 5 out of our 7 games. We swept the 4 against Washington. We did actually only take 1 out of 3 at home against Montreal, but still a 5-2 record for the week after the way we had been playing is good. Gets us to within 3 games of the Mets. So clearly they've struggled a little bit of late. We're up 4 on Montreal and up 8 on the Nationals for second place in the division. So feeling a little better about things there. We've got 3 against Miami, and then the beginning of a series back at home against the Angels to finish off this month of August. Take a quick look at how Yinger has been doing for us. And we put him in a closer role, which I don't love. He's pitched 2 games, not pitched particularly well there, but we are going to... I don't know why they, in the minor leagues, change a guy who's been a starter his entire career to close for them in the minors, but I'm glad I checked on it. We are going to put him into the starting rotation down there, and hopefully he will get a little more consistent work and certainly some more consistent innings, although it's going to be a few days till he gets to pitch for us there, but hopefully we can have him back early September. Certainly going to need his help. And we did win the first 2 games in Miami, and importantly, Shane Bieber looks like he is healthy and ready to come back from that brief stint on the IL. So we will at least get him in the rotation here at the end of August. Hopefully Yinger, after 1 or 2 starts down in AAA, will also be ready to join the team in September. And then Munoz still looks like he's about 3 weeks out, so we should have an opportunity to hopefully have him on the team for the last week or 2 of the season as well. And unfortunately, we lost our last 2 games in August, so as we get to September, roster expansion, the month of September beginning here, 2.5 behind the Mets. They still, by percentage points, have the best record in the National League over the Reds. So there's certainly a chance if we won the division that we'd have home field advantage for as long as we're alive in the National League. Clearly, the goal right now is to just get past the Mets. If we happen to get past the Reds at all, that's a bonus. But avoiding a wild card playoff series is certainly our primary goal. Taking a look at the upcoming schedule here for the month of September, we got the last 2 against the Angels, 3 against the Twins, and then 3 against the Cubs at home before we go on the road for a week against Arizona and the mighty Reds, back at home for Philly and the Mets, and then we finish off on the road at Pittsburgh and Atlanta. So certainly those series, the 3 games at Cincinnati and the 3 games against the Mets, are probably the most critical in terms of trying to position ourselves for the NL East title and the best record in baseball. But obviously we're going to need to play well over the first couple of weeks of the month before we even face Cincinnati for those games to really matter. And all in all, by far, August was our worst month of the season, first losing month of the season, a 13-16 record. We have actually improved to 4th in runs scored, but we've dipped to 4th in runs allowed. Starter ERA has ballooned to 4.01. Still 4th best in the NL, but trending in the wrong direction. Bullpen ERA also 4th. Hopefully having Bieber back will help with that. And it would obviously be nice if we can get Yinger back at some point too. And you all probably saw this. I think just set his position to starting pitcher, but I didn't force him into that role. So just getting careless as I'm trying to play through this, but it is pretty ridiculous that a guy who's a proven major league pitcher they decide to put as a closer for AAA when he's on a rehab assignment. I want to get the guy some innings, but now that I have finally forcing him as a starting pitcher instead of just moving his position to starting pitcher, they will straighten that out. But would have loved if he had a couple starts under his belt already, and we could look towards maybe him having just one start and back on the major league roster, but definitely want to try to stretch him out before we bring him back. But he will certainly be hopefully a big help, potentially pitching in the Cincinnati or the Mets series over the next several weeks. And we ended up winning the last two against the Angels, but we did lose 2 out of 3 at home against Minnesota. No game today, and then getting ready for that 3-game homestand against the Cubbies before we go on the road. Fortunately for us, the Mets have started really stinking it up, 2-8 over their last 10. So even though we're playing 500-ish ball over the last week or so, only 1 game behind the Mets now, and fortunately for us, the Expos have also lost 6 in a row. So it looks like it is becoming a 2-team race for the NL East at this point, and we are still right in the middle of it. And we lost the first game against the Cubs, game and a half behind the Mets now. I think it's time to bring up Yinger. He did go 105 innings 5 days ago, so he did get 1 start. He's pitched 14 innings, hasn't been incredibly effective, but I'd say that 6 games, including over 100 innings in his over 100 pitches in his last outing, should mean that he's hopefully ready to go. That'll allow us to hopefully get back to the rotation we envisioned with Ohtani, Bieber, Painter, Yinger, and then we'll have to decide whether Kim or Sullivan stays on as our 5th starter. But looks like Painter's a little banged up right now with a diagnosis pending, so we may not have the rotation that we had hoped for. Painter has certainly been the least effective of the big 4 this year for us, but obviously don't want to be losing him right before the playoffs, and it appears that that could be where we are headed, unfortunately. And things are rapidly spiraling for our Wings. We were swept at home by the Cubs, so lost 5 out of our last 6 at home against the Twins and the Cubs before we head to the road. We're now 3.5 behind the Mets as they have turned things around. And Painter is done for the year, shoulder inflammation, out 4 to 5 months. So we have got Yinger and Bieber back into the rotation, which should be positive. Although Yinger was not great yesterday, saddled with the loss, 73 pitches and the 3-4 loss to the Cubs. But at least he's hopefully healthy. But Painter will be going back onto the injured list. And that will mean that in the playoffs, either Kim or Sullivan will end up being part of the rotation, which is not really the way we had written this up. Kind of hoping that we would have our big 4 for the playoffs. This was a win now year for our Buffalo Wings. Hopefully we can still do some damage when we do get to the playoffs, but going to be missing one of our top 4 starting pitchers at a minimum when we're there, unfortunately. And another rough week in the books for our Buffalo Wings. We took 2 out of 3 in Arizona, but then we were swept in the 3-game series against the Reds. You may remember they are the team that swept us out of the NLCS last year. So they are a team that clearly has our number at this point. We've got the Phillies, who are not a very good team, coming up, and then those 3 critical games against the Mets. We're only 3.5 out, so the Mets are not running away from us, but hopefully we can take advantage of the last place Phillies as we start off this final homestand of the season and get into a position where we're less than 3 games behind the Mets as we begin that 3-game series with them. And if we can sweep the Mets, we can still achieve our goal of winning the NL East this year. Clearly, the Reds at 92 and 58 are 8.5 games ahead of us in the standings, so extremely unlikely that we will be able to track them down for the best record in the National League. And the Astros are even better than they are, so clearly not going to be in the mix for the best record in baseball again this year, but should be able to get over 90 wins and still have a chance with the 3 games that we've got at home against the Mets to make this NL East interesting. Taking a look at the leaderboard here as we head into the final 2 weeks of the season. Samuel Basallo, last year's NL Rookie of the Year, second in the league in ribbies. Seifu with 92 steals, closing in on that 100 steal mark again. Tied for second in the National League in batter WAR. And Ohtani with a 6.4 batter WAR pitcher WAR continues to lead the league in pitcher WAR in the National League, and his 3.05 ERA is now third best in the league at this late stage of the season. And we won the first game against Philadelphia 8-5, and we're only 2 behind the Mets now, so it looks like they may have lost both of their last 2 games, including one on our off day. So we are potentially going to be in position for those 3 games to matter a lot. Unfortunately, the injuries continue. Shortstop Marcelo Meyer, day-to-day with a sprained ankle, but a moderate impact on throwing and running. I don't think we put him on the IL, but I think we're going to certainly sit him out at least these first 2 games against Philadelphia. Give Kevin Made a little bit of action at shortstop the next couple of days. And we lost the second game against Philadelphia to fall 3 back behind the Mets, so certainly kind of feel like against a last place Philadelphia team at home, we have to win this game to take the series against them and to ensure that at worst we are 3 games behind the Mets heading into that 3-game series. Does look like Andres Munoz is ready to come back. So that is a slight positive piece of news. He's been out for 7 weeks, but the AAA season is over, so can't really send him on a rehab assignment. We are going to bring him back up. Clase, since he's taken over this closer, only 3 saves for us, 0-2 record. He's been fine, not as great as I would have hoped given his ratings, but we'll probably keep Clase in as a closer at least over the next few games to hopefully let Munoz get his first appearance back in a perhaps, somewhat less stressful situation. And with Meyer still banged up as we get ready for this Mets series, and we did win against Phillies, so we are 2 games back ahead of this 3-game series. We are going to bring up Toshimitsu Kato, the young import from Japan, signed as a minor league free agent last offseason. He's moved steadily up between high A ball, double A, and triple A. Hit .314 for us in triple A in 204 at-bats. His batting profile suggests that he got very lucky to do that, but really bringing him up for his glove at this point gives us a little insurance if Made gets banged up or needs a day off, that we will still have a very competent defensive shortstop on the major league roster while we're sitting Marcelo Meyer out, and also could be a guy who could pinch run for us at some point. Not sure how many at-bats he'll actually get, but the Albany season is over anyways, so might as well get him a little more action and see what he can do in probably what will be a small sample size for him at the major league level. And we're at least making things interesting with the Mets as we head into the last week of the season. We took 2 out of 3 at home the hard way, losing the first, 1-run win in the second game, and then a 8-6 win yesterday in 10 innings. Samuel Basallo 2-run homer in the bottom of the 10th to give us the victory. So we are 1 game behind the Mets now, with 7 games to go. We've got 4 against Pittsburgh and 3 against Atlanta, all on the road here. Pittsburgh and Atlanta both kind of in the middle of the pack in the National League. We've actually been passed by the Dodgers for the lead in the wild card race, but our magic number for the wild card is down to 1. So clearly the hope is to get past those New York Mets, take a quick look at what their schedule is going to look like over these final weeks of the season. Ours doesn't look that bad, as I mentioned. It looks like they've got the Nationals at home and then Montreal at home to finish off their season. So I guess the thing we've got going for us is that Atlanta and Pittsburgh are not as good as the Nationals and the Expos, but the Mets have a 1-game lead on us, and they've got all 7 of their games at home, whereas all 7 of ours over this final week of the season will be on the road. So the odds certainly not in our favor. I'd say it's probably like a 25-30% chance that we end up winning the division, but we've got a chance here as we head into the final week of the season after taking 2 out of 3 against the Mets in our final home games of the regular season. And we did win the first game in Pittsburgh to clinch a playoff spot, 9-6 victory, and the Mets also lost. So we are in a flat-footed tie with them as we begin these final 6 games of the year. And unfortunately, we got shut out today, 6-0. But it looks like the Mets also lost. And Seifu now suspended for 3 games as a result of a brawl. That's clearly not optimal for us. So Marcelo Meyer back now, but Seifu suspended 3 games, and with 99 steals on the year, that could end up costing Seifu from his ability to hit 100 for a second straight year. You can see the batting average for him, 311. Not quite as efficient on the base paths as he was last year or the year before, but still incredibly efficient base runner. An insane 21 triples on the year to go with the 38 doubles, 117 runs scored, OPS over 800, OPS plus and WRC plus both in the 120 area, 16.6 WRAA, and an 8.3 WAR on the season. So that suspension definitely going to hurt us. But we're in a flat-footed tie. Or actually, we might be ahead now. I haven't looked to see what the Mets did. No, we are in a flat-footed tie as the Mets finally won also. 4 games to go, and we're guaranteed to be in the playoffs. But you can see here that with the Dodgers playing really well and the Cubs also surging, it's conceivable that whoever loses the NL East could be on the road for a wild card series. So even more important for us to hopefully get past the Mets over these last few games of the year. Take a quick look at the record against them in case we end up in a flat-footed tie. And our Buffalo Wings are 7-5 against the Mets. So if we end up in a tie, we should be the division winners. So that is one small positive piece of news for us as we lose probably the most important player in our offense for 3 of the final 4 games of the season. So we'll finish up today, move on to the final game at Pittsburgh. Hopefully we can take that series 3 out of 4. That would be a big step in the right direction, particularly if we can win the first game without Mr. Seifu in our lineup. And the computer, as it sometimes does, seems to be crawling now as I'm trying to do this stuff live. Here we go. Got another message here. Oh, he's scouting Deshaun Seifu for us as we're trying to get scouting reports on all of our guys as we head to the end of the season. Can we get the W today against Pittsburgh? Potentially huge game for us. And we did get the 8-5 win. Take a look at the standings. And the Mets continue to win also, so we're still in a flat-footed tie with them with 3 games to go. But clearly good to get a W without Seifu in the lineup. 3 games now left for us against the Braves. If we win them all, we will be division champions. Unfortunately, we lost. Looks like the Mets also lost, so we're still tied for first. So may have averted a little bit of trouble there with the Mets losing. So that saves us a bit. This is our final game without Seifu, and then he will be back. Would love to be kind of setting up our pitching rotation for the playoffs, but these games to potentially earn a first round bye are critically important, so we can't count our chickens before they are hatched. Big game today against the Braves. Last game without Seifu, given that suspension. A win today would be huge for the Buffalo Wings. Another loss, and now we're a game behind. So we've got to win this final game of the year, and now we're counting on the Mets to lose to win a division title. And if we don't win the division title, we are quite likely to be on the road for a wild card series. So definitely has been a rough last couple months of the year for us. Need a win today. Need a stolen base from Seifu to get him to 100 steals on the year for whatever that's worth. If I can only have one of those things, would certainly take the win today. Even if we get the win now, though, we've put the Mets in a position where they control their own destiny. Take a look and see who we've got at the mound. Hayden Yinger, who hasn't been great since he's come back. You can see the records dipped to 5-3. The ERA has climbed to 2.24, but still certainly one of the 3 guys among Ohtani, Bieber, and Yinger that we would want on the mound. Those are the 3 guys who are definitely going to be in our playoff rotation, although conceivably if we end up in a 3-game wild card series, Yinger might not even be able to pitch game 3 after going today, but we got to try to make a run at the division title, and we need a W to do it. We lost, so we are in the playoffs, but we are not division winners. The Mets also won, so we were kind of in a situation there where it didn't matter what we did since they won, but tough finish to the season, 3 losses in a row, and you can see although we were up 4 on the wild card for the final wild card on the Cardinals, looks like we're going to be facing the 92-win Cubbies in a wild card series, and we're going to be on the road in Wrigley Field. So a disappointing end to the season. Doesn't look like Seifu got a stolen base in that final game, so he finishes with 99, finishes 3rd in the National League with an 8.4 WAR, and Ohtani actually dipped to be second in the National League among pitcher WAR, 12-11 record, 3.33 ERA, and 242 strikeouts over 216 in a third innings pitch. So a very valuable pitcher and a very valuable hitter on our team in Ohtani and Seifu, but a disappointing last couple months of the season for our Buffalo Wings, losing records in each month. So even after what we did at the trade deadline to what we hoped set our team up for a strong finish, and even ultimately getting Yinger back, the losses of Painter for the season and the losses of Munoz and Bieber for decent chunks of the last couple months of the season certainly did not help. And we also kind of started scoring less. We ended up seventh, middling seventh in the National League in runs scored. Ended up fourth in runs allowed, but you can see both our starter and our bullpen ERA trending in the wrong direction over the last couple of months. Our performance against left-handed pitchers has been pretty bad the last couple of months. Our record is right in line with Pythagorean expectations at 90-72. Pretty good at home, just below 500 at the road or on the road. And as I said, for a season where 2 days ago we still had a chance at a first-round bye to move from not winning the division and not getting that first-round bye to being on the road for a 3-game wild card series is a pretty dramatic shift in our fortune for this season. Certainly that 3-game sweep in Atlanta was not the way that we wanted to end the season. Get a day off tomorrow and then begin the 3-game series at the Cubs. So we are likely not going to have Yinger available. So we'll have to... when they pulled Yinger from our roster, I don't know. Maybe we should do that. Ohtani pitched 3 days ago, so he'll be able to go. Bieber pitched 2 days ago in a loss. So he probably can go in game 3, but we're going to have to probably go with Kim, who would be ready, or Sullivan, who would be ready in game 1 or 2. So we'll have to give some thought to what our 3-man rotation is going to look like. We had to try to win the division, so the fact that Yinger is not going to be ready to likely go in this wild card series is very unfortunate, but we still had a chance to win the division on the final day of the season, and as we found, the difference between winning the division and losing the division in this case was half a week off and a first-round bye and home field in the NLDS versus a day off and going on the road for a 3-game wild card series. And unfortunately for us, things did not work out in our favor this year. So a 90-72 record in the regular season, back in the playoffs for the second time in our 4 seasons as general manager of the Buffalo Wings. But we were 101 win division champion that made it to the NLCS a year ago, and feel that we added a fair amount of talent and really tried to position ourselves to win it all this year. So if we win it all, the season is a success. But I would have to say that going from 101 wins to 90 wins, particularly the way we did it, where we're playing our worst baseball of the year over these last couple of months, can only be fairly described as a disappointing regular season. But the positive spin on things is that we will have an opportunity to hopefully rectify that disappointing regular season in the playoffs. And we'll see whether it's a long journey through the playoffs or a quick trip to Chicago and then right to the end of the season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.